Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we have a pretty intense assignment in front of us.
We do.
You've given us this incredibly dense investigative report on Representative Andy Biggs. He's the Republican from Arizona's 5th Congressional District.
And this document, it's not just about one thing. It tries to connect three, let's call them spheres of his activity.
Okay, what are they?
His personal finances, his actual legislative decisions in Congress, and then his political strategy after the 2020 election.
So our mission for this deep dive is to basically distill the specific claims and connections that the report makes.
That's absolutely right. The authors really structure their entire argument around three key ideas they've labeled.
Which are?
First, his wealth shield. Second, a pattern they call legislative capture. And third, his alleged role as an operational conduit in the effort to overturn the election.
And what's so fascinating, and what the report really hammers home, is that these three pillars, they don't exist in a vacuum.
No, not at all. It's a multi-layered view. It claims his personal financial structure directly enables certain policy choices.
Which then feeds into a very specific political agenda.
Exactly. And the foundation for all of it, according to the report, is the money. So I think we have to start there.
Okay, let's unpack this. We'll start with what the report calls the wealth shield.
Right.
So most politicians are, constantly fundraising. But this report states Biggs's political independence comes from something that happened way back in 1993.
A huge American family publisher's sweepstakes win.
How much?
Valued at $10 million.
Wow. Okay.
And just think about the kind of political leverage that gives you. The report argues this financial cushion, it just insulates him from the typical pressure cycle.
So he doesn't need to, constantly dial for dollars.
Exactly. Most legislators, especially earlier in their careers, they have to keep these broad donor groups happy. If you have $10 million in the bank, you can afford to pursue a much stricter, purely ideological agenda.
So the report suggests he's less beholden to, say, the National Party or big business interests. But financial independence doesn't mean no financial entanglements, right?
And that is the central conflict the source highlights. You dig into his 2023 financial disclosure, and the picture gets, well, a lot more complicated.
How so?
He lists a personal liability. It's a loan valued somewhere between $15,000 and $50,000.
Okay, a personal loan
Yeah.
from a bank.
No. And that's the key. It's owed to two specific people, Frank and Tricia Grow.
And who are they? What's the red flag here, according to the report?
It's the transparency, or really the lack of it. Frank Grow isn't just a donor. The report identifies him as a prominent figure in Arizona's construction industry.
So he has business before the state.
Registered positions on state house legislation, yes. When you take a private loan from someone with active legislative interests, you're sidestepping all the usual ethical guardrails.
You don't know the interest rate.
Or the repayment terms, or the collateral. The report raises the concern that this kind of opaque arrangement could function as an impermissible gift or a direct line for influence.
So the independence from that $10 million win is potentially compromised by these smaller private debts tied to local industry.
Precisely. It shifts the potential influence from broad institutions to these very specific personal relationships.
Which brings us to another area the report really scrutinizes. Something it calls the 12 Oaks mystery.
Yes, this is where you really start to see the tight ecosystem the sources are describing.
It's a confusing cluster of entities, right? All with that name.
It is. So, for example, the Biggs for Congress campaign committee pays rent.
Standard practice.
But where does the rent money go? To an entity called 12 Oaks LLC.
And the concern is who owns that LLC.
Right. If that LLC is owned by the family, which the report suggests it might be, you've basically found a way to convert donor funds, political capital, into private personal equity.
You're using campaign funds to pay your own mortgage or overhead.
In essence. And the name doesn't stop there.
No.
We also find a campaign donor, Olivia Maxwell, her listed employer, 12 Oaks Consulting.
Okay, a different 12 Oaks.
And she's also associated with a firm called Generational Group, an M&A advisory firm. The report argues this isn't just a coincidence.
They see it as a pattern.
Yes.
Yeah.
This network of shared names, 12 Oaks LLC, 12 Oaks Consulting, suggests a highly centralized holding company or structure used by his inner circle, blurring the lines between campaign work and private business.
It paints this picture of a deeply integrated family and political machine. The report even uses the phrase a dynastic foothold.
It speaks to the efficiency of the whole operation. First, you have the direct family payroll.
Who's on it?
Biggs' wife, Cindy Biggs. She receives direct payments from his campaign committee. Now, this is legal for bona fide work, but the report views it as another way to funnel donor funds right into the family household budget.
And the second part of that dynastic foothold?
That involves his daughter, Miley.
Miley Biggs, right. She ran for office.
Correct. She launched a campaign for the Arizona State Senate, and the report really emphasizes that her campaign shares key consultants with her father's federal committee. Specifically 12 Oaks Consulting, there's that name again, and another firm, HSP Direct.
So it looks like a deliberate effort to transfer his political network to her.
That's the suggestion. You use the same team, the same resources to build the next generation of the political family. It's a closed loop for capital and influence.
Okay, so if his unique financial freedom lets him ignore general donor pressure, where does that freedom show up in his policies?
Well, that brings us to the second pillar of the report, the pattern they call legislative capture.
Legislative capture. So his policy actions align very specifically with the interests of people close to him, former staff, key donors.
Exactly. The report builds this section around the classic revolving door effect.
Staffers leave his office, they get high-paying lobbying jobs.
And then their old boss introduces legislation that benefits their new clients. The report suggests it's a very clear, efficient mechanism.
Let's get into a specific case study from the report. The effort to abolish OSHA.
Right, and the connection to his former chief of staff, Deborah Maisel.
Okay, walk us through it.
Deborah Maisel was his chief of staff for 5 years, 2017 to 2022, a top aide. Her pivot is just a textbook example of this. She leaves his office to become the director of federal affairs for
National Roofing Contractors Association, the NRCA.
Exactly, and the NRCA's core lobbying interests.
Let me guess. Regulations.
Fighting OSHA regulations, specifically rules on heat injury prevention and silica exposure. These are very costly rules for the construction industry.
And so what's the legislative outcome? What does Biggs do?
While his former top aide is lobbying to weaken OSHA, Biggs introduces H.R. 86. The bill is literally called the NOSHA Act.
The NOSHA Act.
And its purpose is to, quote, repeal the Occupational Safety and Health Act of 1970 and abolish the agency entirely.
So it's not just weakening a rule, it's a complete validation of his former aide's new corporate agenda.
It shows that his anti-regulatory ideology happens to align perfectly with the immediate commercial needs of his departed staff's new employers. The report argues this is more than a coincidence.
And this pattern repeats, right? There's another former staffer, Hannah Ballum.
Yes, another example. Hannah Ballum, a former staffer, transitions into lobbying at a firm called 1607 Strategies.
And her clients.
Heavy hitters in finance, Ameriprise Financial, the American FinTech Council.
Okay, so what policy area is she lobbying on for them?
She's focused on the regulatory environment around investing, particularly the growth of ESG.
Environmental, social, and governance criteria.
Right. For any listener who needs a refresher, those are the metrics investors use to judge a company on things beyond just profit, like their carbon footprint or diversity policies.
And why do her clients in fintech and finance care?
Many large financial firms see strict ESG rules as cumbersome, restrictive. They prefer a less constrained investment landscape.
And what does Biggs do?
He introduces the Stop Woke Investing Act. It directly targets and tries to limit the use of ESG criteria.
So again, a former top aide leaves, takes a lobbying job, and he introduces sweeping legislation that directly benefits her new employers.
It suggests that the lack of pressure from typical donors just opens up space for this hyper-focused pressure from his immediate political orbit.
And this capture, as the report calls it, it also extends beyond staff to his active donors, right? Specifically on real estate policy.
That's the third leg of this policy triangle. The report connects Biggs' support for bills like H.R. 206, which would preempt local zoning rules against rentals.
Directly to the business interests of key donors.
Yes, donors like Christopher Todd of Christopher Todd Communities. His entire business model is build to rent.
Entire neighborhoods of rental housing.
Exactly. And that model hits roadblocks from local governments that want to control their own zoning and housing supply. So a federal law that sweeps those local rules aside would be a huge win for him.
So we've tracked the money and we've tracked the policy.
Right.
Now we get to the third major finding of the report. Biggs' alleged role in the attempts to overturn the 2020 election.
This is where the source material describes him as a central planner and an operational conduit. It portrays him not as a follower, but as a key architect of the strategy.
And what was the primary strategy discussed in the report?
It was a parliamentary strategy known as the Green Bay Sweep.
Sounds like a football play.
It's a maneuver designed to delay the Electoral College certification in Congress. The goal was to run out the clock, force the issue back to the states.
And hope those states would then rescind Biden electors and appoint alternate ones.
That was the plan, according to the sources.
And what's the evidence linking Biggs directly to the planning of this?
The report confirms he was at a critical December 21st, 2020 meeting at the White House.
Who was there?
President Trump, Mark Meadows, Rudy Giuliani. It was a high-level meeting specifically to map out this exact obstruction strategy.
So the report places him at the inception of the plan. And it also details coordination with outside actors.
Yes, notably the Stop the Steal organizer, Ali Alexander.
What does Alexander say?
In videos cited by the report, he's very open about it. He specifically names Biggs, along with Paul Gosar and Mark Brooks, as congressmen he schemed with.
He used the word schemed.
Yes, and claimed they held dozens of planning briefings. It shows this direct line between members of Congress and the external organizers.
And beyond the planning in D.C., the report gets into a pressure campaign he allegedly waged back in his home state of Arizona.
This part focused on leveraging a controversial constitutional idea, the independent state legislature theory.
Which is the argument that state legislatures can basically bypass the popular vote and just appoint their own electors.
Correct. And the report shows Biggs pushing this theory in real time. There's a November 2020 text he sent to Mark Meadows urging the White House to push this theory to get states to appoint alternate electors.
But the most direct action he allegedly took was on the morning of January 6th itself?
Yes. The report documents a direct phone call from Biggs to the Arizona House Speaker at the time, Rusty Bowers,
And what was the ask?
to support the decertification of Arizona's electors. A last-minute, direct attempt to disrupt the process.
And Bowers.
Bowers later testified under oath that he refused. And the report adds that this is still an active issue. The Arizona Attorney General issued subpoenas to Biggs in 2024 related to the fake electors plot.
To wrap this section up, the report uses a very strong phrase, consciousness of guilt, when it discusses the next piece of evidence.
Which is the pursuit of a presidential pardon.
This comes from Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, right?
Yes, the former White House aide. She testified that Biggs requested a pardon. Not just any pardon, but a blanket pardon for the members involved in that December 21st planning meeting.
And the report says her testimony is corroborated.
It is. It aligns with an email from Representative Mark Brooks, who specifically requested pardons for, quote, every congressman and senator who voted to reject the Electoral College vote submissions. The authors see these requests as an awareness of their potential legal jeopardy. So, if we synthesize these three distinct threads, the financial, the legislative, and the operational, the report connects the dots across really the entire political landscape of this one lawmaker.
It starts with the $10 million windfall giving him independence.
That independence then makes space for this deeply connected legislative action, like the OSHA repeal, which directly benefits his inner circle.
And that all culminates in the alleged operational role in the effort to halt the transfer of power.
That's the narrative the report lays out.
So the major takeaway for you, the listener, is that this report argues his unique financial freedom didn't get rid of political entanglement. It shifted its nature.
Right.
That cushion allowed for these highly focused ideological legislative moves, what the report calls legislative capture, and pair that with the high-stakes political maneuvering around the election challenge.
And that leads us to a final provocative thought for you to explore on your own.
Let's hear it.
Considering all these specific details, the family payroll, the shared consulting firms, the use of entities like 12 Oaks to handle campaign rent, how effective are our current campaign finance regulations, really, at managing the transition of political capital into personal or even dynastic wealth in today's political landscape?